Hey everybody, we are overdue on a update of the 460 swap into our bump side Ford ramp truck here, and things have been progressing pretty well. On this list in red are things that have gone from the parts truck to the ramp truck. In blue, that's things that are new. And you can see that list is rather one-sided. So let's take a look at the engine bay and start going over that stuff. The engine bay is definitely starting to look like an actual engine bay now, and it's getting full, but it's not jam-packed full of stuff, which is really quite nice. I'm really happy with how everything's fitting so far, and quite shocked that some things are fitting at all. Front and center is this really nice aluminum radiator that came from the parts truck. This was put into that truck when the original radiator failed not very long ago. So this is a pretty new aftermarket unit. It is oversized for that truck and significantly oversized for this truck. However, it fits almost exactly within the opening in the front. And as you can see, we have no AC condenser in front of that. So this radiator should be doing an amazing job of keeping this big block Ford cool. Behind that, we have the original plastic shroud from the F350. I have added a bit of a rubber seal to the top of it here because you remember that shroud got a little chewed up at some point, but it does fit with the original mechanical fan, even though I thought there was going to be no way due to the clearance front to core support. Amazingly, somehow, everything's fitting great. The radiator is bolted into the core support nice and secure, with the two mounting tabs up top and the 2 feet at the bottom. So nice and secure there. We have the original radiator hoses from the F350 fitting. I did have to trim the bottom one just a little bit, but it's good and secure. And I did have to make a little bit of a relief in the shroud itself so that we didn't have any issues with that shroud rubbing on the radiator hose, but that's all good. You can see this original oil cooler heat exchanger thing is still in place. So all of that system completely original to the 460, to this engine. On top of that is the part that some people really don't like. I have retained the original intake for this engine. Not just the manifold part, but the entire plastic/rubber part of it as well. Now it did take a little bit of modification. This part here is where the engine grabs air for the idle control. Let me show you that down below. See, there's this extra hose right here that goes to this plastic section. So it can pull air from here to bypass the throttle bodies for idle control. That part of it also included these weird devices. So about here, these were mounted to this, and there was an appropriate section of the rubber tubing for shrouding this, basically. So these lived inside of the intake tubes. I don't really know why. There's a lot of different reasons that people say that they exist on the internet, but there's also tons of people that say, just take them out. They're nothing but a restriction. They do nothing for you. And then there's other people that say, no, it helps with the immediate throttle response. And then there's me that says, it'll fit anyway. So I lopped them off and shortened to these 2 tubes, and now the entire original air intake assembly fits, and it looks pretty much like a factory unit in there, which is kind of cool to me. I'm really enjoying the kind of resto mod look of this, where everything looks OEM, basically. It looks like a factory truck. It just looks like a newer factory truck until you see the outside. And that is something that, I don't know, kind of appeals to me with a project like this. Beyond the cooling system and the intake, we have a bunch of stuff that really blows my mind that we were able to use, and that is the entire clutch hydraulics. So this truck originally is a cable clutch style setup. So there was never provisions for this truck to be hydraulically controlled for the clutch. So it never had this master cylinder tucked next to the very large brake booster. And I have managed to not just retain the master cylinder from the parts truck, but the entire hard line and soft line. It does get a little bit close to the exhaust manifold, so I do need to go down there and do a little tweaking to it to make sure we don't have any boiling of fluid there, but should be pretty easy. Not only is that all retained all the way from the master down to the actuator, it's all unbled. Like I literally have taken this off of the other truck and installed it on this one without bleeding the system. It is operating exactly as it was on the other truck, which is pretty baffling, to be honest. That was kind of the easy part of that, though. It got a little bit more complicated when we go inside the truck. Apologies, I know lighting is low in here, but inside the truck, this is the clutch pedal, and this clutch pedal, like I said, was originally a cable-style operation, and it actually used a top actuator. So the cable basically got pulled from the other side of the lever up at the top, up way in the dashboard. For a hydraulic clutch, you need it to push in towards the firewall. Well, since this had no provisions for that, I have fabricated a bracket that welds to the clutch pedal here and up at the top, and in that there is now a hole at the top with a rod that goes through to the rod of the master cylinder. Now the master cylinder bolted to the firewall here, this is a sheet of 1/4-inch plate steel that is on the firewall now. I have cut this in a shape that it has tons of surface area on it around the master cylinder because this firewall wasn't designed to support the pressure of this clutch pushing on it, and if you did nothing there, it would very likely just push the entire master cylinder right out of the firewall. It would just bend it, crack it, and that would be it. So this plate should do a good job of just distributing the force along the sheet metal here to give it some hope of holding together. If we need to go in here and do more to brace this in the future, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I brought out ye old cell phone light so you might have a chance of seeing something, but it's still not great. This is all kind of, I would say, mocked up for now, but it is completely functional at the moment. But I will be getting better hardware for the part where the master cylinder bolts to the clutch rod. I just used what I had laying around, but I'm going to get some high-strength hardware for that and then gusset that in against the pedal as well. But it's a proof of concept. It is working. Do you need proof? Working clutch. And on the other side of that, another thing that I always kind of had the idea that I wanted to do this, but this is actually the gas pedal, the throttle pedal, out of the F350, now bolted to the firewall of this truck. This required basically making an entire bracket change at the top because the throttle pedal on the F350, kind of hard to describe, but essentially the bracket mounted half to the firewall, half to the transmission tunnel, because the tunnel is much bigger in the other truck, and the engine sits much further back in the other truck. So that bracket was basically on a 45-degree slant, versus on this one, it needed to be flat up against the firewall. So I cut one side of the bracket and flattened it out and welded in an extension, basically. The whole thing's kind of flimsy. However, it's less flimsy than it was in the other truck. So I don't know if I've done better or worse than Ford did. This door just closed on its own. I didn't touch it. We're just going to say there's ghosts. Ghosts are cool. They're fine. Whatever. But the throttle is working, and it works, at zero tension, so it's not holding the throttle open. And if I push it to the floor, if I floor it, it is actually flooring it, and we're getting 100% throttle opening. So that's really cool. The only thing I'm not super happy about is how low it is, and I don't know if there's anything I can do to change that, but if it becomes a real problem, maybe in the future I could redesign the bracket. You can kind of see there that the gas pedal is just, it's pretty deep. Now that's not super uncommon. That's actually pretty similar to how it was with the original throttle pedal in the truck, but I want to say it's at least an inch, maybe 2 inches deeper now, but it really shouldn't be a problem. And with that gas pedal, we also have a throttle cable, so that's the original throttle cable from this engine, and I'm glad that I was able to use that because it has kind of a unique and special mount over here. I've still saved all of the mounting tabs and provisions for the cruise control stuff in case I happen to get really crazy someday and want to mess with that stuff, but I really, really doubt that I will. But it's all there just in case. As far as the rest of the engine goes, I do still have quite a bit I want to do up here. I haven't done any of the tune-up stuff that I have in line to do on it because I've been trying to get done with all the fabrication stuff. Okay, have I missed anything? I don't think so. The manifolds, catalytic converter. So the manifolds from the engine and the catalytic converter from the original 460 are now on this truck. I think we already knew about the manifolds, but they are now mounted 100% with new gaskets under them on both sides. This side ended up being a royal pain in the butt. If anyone out there is watching this and is hemming and hawing about doing this kind of conversion yourself, keep in mind the space between this exhaust manifold and that steering box. It's going to be tricky. You're going to get frustrated. This oil dipstick basically interferes with everything right there. Took a lot of finagling and wasn't a whole lot of fun. But of all the things that have gone super well in this, one annoying thing is basically nothing. Underneath the truck, you can see the last of the carryover parts for the day here. The catalytic converter is now part of this truck, and that is exactly what I wanted to do. I know it doesn't have to have a catalytic converter. It's an old enough vehicle that it's exempt from it, but there's just no reason not to have one. This isn't a drag racing car. This isn't a racing vehicle or some kind of high-performance application. There's absolutely no reason not to use a catalytic converter. I'm kind of like speed running this list because I want to stream later today, but I want to get this video out right now. Let's see. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, the overflow, I put that on there. That's not actually something that was from the other truck. I had a coolant tank from somebody, I think an old friend of mine gave that to me years ago, and I had it sitting around, and it was just perfect. So still, about 10 plus things that came from the parts truck that are working on this truck that if we didn't go for the route of getting an entire truck, we would have been scrapping, looking around for used parts or trying to cobble together new parts. So it's been really a great thing to have the parts truck to do this, and it's saved a ton of money in the exchange of time. Like, for a lot of things, it takes more time to reuse old parts instead of buying new stuff or buying stuff that just outright fits. But in this case, a lot of the stuff really just worked. There's things like the radiator. If I had bought a radiator for a bump side, then it would have just bolted in. And I could have just bolted on some electric fans or something like that. And it would have been easier. Could have done the throttle body style intake on there and put the old, air filter on top of that. It would have been easier, sure. But it would have cost who knows how much more. So the exchange from me of a little bit more of my time to save money on the project and to just keep it, feeling sensible is worth it to me. I'm not rushing to SEMA. I don't have any huge deadlines or anything like that. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm just trying to build a truck that I like and something I can use. So I'm using what I got and what little skills I have to get there. So the new stuff and the stuff that basically took the most time over the last week or week and a half or so, the exhaust system. Most of the exhaust system is new. And when I say new, it is not a kit. It is a bunch of stuff that I pieced together and made myself. I am not a fabricator. I'm not a welder. I'm none of these things, but I've done the best that I can. Oh, right, and the new coolant overflow tank. Let me show you that real quick, because it's so perfect. I'm glad I kept a hold of this for all those years. So the exhaust system. Let's take a look at that. So let's start with collectors. So the original system had a Y pipe that took the driver's side over to the passenger side, into a Y pipe, into a O2 sensor collector, and then into the exhaust system. All of that didn't fit our application. We're going under the truck. It's going to be dark. It's going to be hard to see, but you'll get the general grasp of it. And if it's dark, you won't be looking at my horrible welding too closely. So right there, you can see a new Y pipe. I've gotten a bunch of 2.5-inch bends and cut them into pieces so that they can make it up there to the collector. Maybe we can see that. I think you can. And then on the other side, let me get to the other side so you can see, but that joins underneath the transmission crossmember. Originally, we wanted to go above it. It's too dark. But between this guy right here and the transmission was just so tight to get both of them to go through. So it was like either I was going to get it over this and under this, or under this and over this. But trying to get it over both was beyond my fabrication skills. So I have decided to go under the crossmember, and we still have about a foot of ground clearance there. I have no problems with how that ended up. It's actually higher on this truck than it sat on the F350. So up in there, you can see some random wires that I have to deal with yet. We have not done any wiring yet, but you can see the exhaust manifold goes down into a collector tube, 2.5-inch with the ball collector up there, and then it goes up and over this I-beam crossmember, and then down and around into the Y pipe. Pretty good setup there. I'm pretty happy with how that all turned out. And I only ended up with 2 slip connections joining the system together. That was for future-proofing, basically. I know it would be great to have the entire thing welded. Do I sound weird? Because I'm literally laying on the ground right now. It would be great to have the whole thing welded, but to be able to have it serviceable in the future, I needed 2 slip joints in there to be able to take the exhaust system out without it giving me a huge fight. Down from there, we have the original catalytic converter and some tubing from that system. That stuff's not in amazing shape, but it's good enough for us. That goes downstream into a muffler that I'm very upset because I welded at a little bit of an angle, but nobody will care in the future. And then from there, it goes into a 45 and continues out the side into a slash-cut exhaust tip. So pretty simple exhaust system. Gets the job done. It's got some hangers on it. Probably going to add 1 more hanger to it, and it'll get the job done, like I said. So we got 2.5 collectors into 3-inch piping all the way back, just like the factory setup. Just sans 1 muffler. It only has 1 muffler, and that is a generic Summit brand muffler that I've heard is great. So we'll have to see how great it is once this thing's running. While I'm crawling around in here, might as well show you that the drive shaft is hooked up. Did my very first U-joint carrier thingamajig, pressing them in, pressing them out, all that fun stuff right here, right now. Luckily, I was able to pull the drive shaft out from the truck, so I was able to do it on the bench, but it is done, and it is mounted, and that is the original drive shaft from this truck mounted directly to the new transmission. Pretty amazing. There's your exhaust system from down below, but most importantly, that is how it looks from the outside. Pretty similar to how the ramp truck's original exhaust looked, but instead of it just being a straight pipe out, I went for the slash cut because they look cooler on everything. Everybody likes the slash cut. But now, the truck is on the ground. Oh hey, I forgot about this. I got an air filter in today. The truck is on the ground and ready for the body to go back on. First, I'm going to go ahead and go through this box of tune-up stuff while I've got easy access. So I'm going to do plugs, plug wires, and just some basic tune-up stuff. Got an air filter as well Do I still have the air filter from this truck? Or from the parts truck? Yeah. Now I've already knocked this thing out a few times, but it was bad. It was real bad. It was very bad. The entire intake was full of corn dust. So I think we'll probably pick up a few horsepower from there. This is one of the rare chances where changing an air filter actually will improve power. Instead of doing, your crappy cone filter on there, we're actually going to just put a factory one in there to gain that power back. But, can he do this one-handed? Is this a one-handed air filter? Can he do it? Oh, look at the corn dust in there. It's on the bottom side. It's fine. It's fine, everybody. Don't worry about it. Has he done it? He's done it. Air filter installed. All right. Okay, there's your semi-quick update to how the ramp truck build is going. Thanks for your support. Been streaming a ton on Twitch of this project. I don't even know how many hours I've put into streaming on this project so far, but it's an absurd amount, and we've got an absurd amount to go. And I appreciate everybody's continued support with the project. And you have no idea how helpful it is for me if you just watch along, just to hang out and keep me company. It does mean a lot. So thank you to everybody. But like I said, we got a ways to go. But I would guess, I'm going to make this same claim again, that the next video we'll be hearing this thing run.